Ron Howard is still troubled by something that Harrison Ford and Paul Le Mat did to him in 1973. They called it Opie shaming, when they tied him in a trailer and tossed bottles at his car. However, that was only the start. Howard remained silent on the negative aspects of Hollywood for half a century. He is now disclosing everything. The mishaps on his sets that almost claimed the lives of performers. The million-dollar lawsuits. The mysteries of his family that nearly destroyed his marriage. The most beloved director in America at last shares the truth about his traumatic experience. On March 1954, Ron Howard was born in Duncan, Oklahoma, a small town. Rance, his father, was attempting to succeed as a writer and actor. Jean, his mother, was an actress as well. They had very little money. It was actually very difficult. However, they packed up everything they owned and relocated to Hollywood in 1958, when Ron was only 4 years old. In the hopes of landing greater acting roles, they were pursuing a dream. It was dangerous. They couldn't promise anything. They ended up raising their little red-haired child in a modest Burbank house, while attempting to make ends meet. They resided near a major studio, which was an oddity. As a result, Ron was exposed to performers, cameras, and movie sets virtually daily as a child. He attended a non-traditional preschool. Instead, despite the fact that no one had prepared for it, he was educated on movie sets, where he watched everything and gradually assimilated into that culture. Their entire destiny was subtly altered by that significant transfer to California, which also impacted where they resided. Ron made an appearance in the film Frontier Woman on January 1956, at the age of barely 18 months. There was no plan. Ron was chosen by his father since he wanted a baby for a brief scenario. A baby crawling across a set was the beginning of something enormous. Due to the fact that his father had recently departed the Air Force, his parents were still having financial difficulties. Ron was even acting live in a theater production by July 15, 1956. His parents, however, did not want him to be treated like other child stars, despite the fact that he was becoming more visible. Until he was 5, they wouldn't sign any long-term contracts. Their finances were almost ruined by that choice. They were so impoverished in 1957 that Rance considered giving up acting and returning to Oklahoma to become a farmer. Still, they clung to the hope that they were doing the right thing for their son. Ron's parents established a very clear rule in 1954: no acting until he was at least 5 years old. In 1957 and 1958, they had to decline large offers despite their inability to pay the rent. To stay afloat, they had to pawn items. They seriously considered leaving Hollywood at the end of 1958, but ultimately decided against it. When Ron turned 5 in 1959, things began to gradually change. He starred in the film The Journey that year. Additionally, his name was shown in the credits for the first time, although it wasn't a joyful one. His freckles and red hair were ridiculed by other staff members on set. He was referred to as a freckle-faced freak. His heart was broken. His father, who was also on the shoot, nearly lost his job after a fight with one of the staff. Even though the job only paid $12,500, they valued it greatly. On April 20th of the same year, his younger brother Clint was born. Funds were still scarce. Even though they owed almost $5,000 in today's currency, his parents were adamant about keeping Ron safe. He was still enrolled in public school. Despite the mounting pressure, they allowed him to be a child as much as possible. Then, in 1960, a significant event occurred. Ron was cast in The Andy Griffith Show as Opie Taylor. He was only 6 years of age. The casting procedure was difficult and time-consuming. Among the over 300 children that tried out, Ron's innate charisma was the most noticeable. On October 3, 1960, the show debuted and quickly gained popularity. Ron was in 243 of the 249 episodes that it ran. He was initially compensated $300 for each episode. He was earning $1,000 every episode by 1968, when the show came to an end. However, a great deal of strain accompanied that achievement. Even though he was only a child, he still had to learn his lines, arrive on time, and provide a flawless performance. Since there was no live audience, every scene and joke had to be timed perfectly. It wasn't simple, but he picked things up quickly. Ron's character gave viewers a sense of security and warmth, and the show seemed to be set in a more innocent era. Viewers adored him because of this. Behind the scenes, however, he was maturing quickly. The show's star, Andy Griffith, and Ron grew close. Andy was not merely a co-star. He took on the role of a mentor. In between takes, he would tell Ron stories and explain scenes. When Ron was just 6 years old, they formed a friendship that gradually deepened. However, things weren't always quiet. Ron occasionally witnessed Andy's heated arguments on set as a result of his drinking problems. It was horrible. In one instance, Andy became agitated in front of everyone after reading aloud a negative review. He was still considerate of Ron in spite of everything, supporting him during poignant moments and showing him respect. On a Queen's movie set in 1997, Andy even paid Ron a visit. It wasn't until Andy passed away in 2012 that they discovered they were, in fact, distant cousins. Their long-standing friendship felt even more special after this unexpected and endearing discovery. Ron was 8 years old when he almost drowned in a scenario on a lake in 1962. On a small boat, they were filming a fishing scenario when something went wrong. Ron plunged into the sea when the boat flipped. Without hesitation, Andy Griffith jumped in when he saw it happen. He dragged Ron away. The show remained silent since the producers didn't want people to know because it might harm the show's reputation. Ron, however, never forgot it. Back then, there were no safety regulations. Accidents were prevalent, and children could work long hours. Ron was affected by the almost drowning. He also ensured that safety measures were in place on every shoot when he began directing movies years later. When the Andy Griffith Show concluded in 1968, Ron was 14 years old. However, he was turned down for more roles. In 1968 and 1969, more than 50 auditions were unsuccessful. He was still viewed by everyone as OP. He was stuck. He expressed his desire to resign to his parents. In 1969, he accepted menial parts, like Gentle Ben, for a pittance of $500 each episode, a significant decrease from his previous salary. He lost the lead in The Wild Country in 1970. The situation continued to worsen. In 1971, after earning $8,000 for 39 episodes, he joined the Smith family. The show, however, failed. He concealed his fear from others as a result of all this rejection. At the same time, he averaged 12 points per game while playing basketball in high school. He made an effort to lead a typical adolescent life in 1972, but he felt trapped on the inside. Things altered once more in 1973. In American Graffiti, Ron was cast at the age of 19. George Lucas directed the film. In June, filming got underway in California. Although everything appeared thrilling from the outside, things were difficult behind the scenes. He was harassed by co-stars Paul Le Mat and Harrison Ford. They shouted for him to dance. OP danced and threw beer bottles close to his car on July 15. On July 20th, they forced him to miss rehearsals by locking him in a trailer. Even his liquids were tampered with. It was all because they didn't recognize the fact that he had been a child star. Ron said nothing. He referred to it as his one and only OP shaming experience. Nevertheless, he survived and received $10,000. Ford apologized years later, but he was still in pain. Ron had met Cheryl Alley in high school back in 1970. On November Honest, they went on their first date, and by December, there were rumors that Cheryl was expecting a child. They were only 16. The rumors went wild. Ron disputed it in the school newspaper in January 1971. It was picked up by tabloids in February. As a result, he lost a $2,000 TV guest job. Despite Cheryl's grief, they remained together. At the height of the show's popularity, in 1976 and 1977, the cast began arguing about money and screen time. Potsy's actor, Anson Williams, was earning $12,000 a show. That was half of what Ron Howard earned. He was envious and frustrated. Williams allegedly rushed off the set on November 16, 1976, while an episode called The Muckrakers was being filmed. The show's creator, Gary Marshall, had changed a sequence in Howard's favor. Some believed it to be partiality. A violent altercation was rumored, but it was never confirmed. ABC sought to keep it secret to preserve their $50 million machine. Things became even more chaotic in 2012 years later. For $10 million in unpaid royalties, Williams and other cast members filed a lawsuit against CBS. They said they never got their cut from all the items. More than 5 million Happy Days lunchboxes were sold in 1976 alone. April 4, 2012, marked the settlement of the case. Only $65,000 was given to each of them. Williams claimed that while the studios made millions of dollars annually, he never even earned $100. Although he was not involved in the case. Howard said in a 2025 interview that the incidents nearly destroyed friendships. In early 1975, Howard made his first short film in secret while still performing in Happy Days. It was called Deed of Daring Do, about 10 minutes long. He shot it on a 2-week sabbatical in March, using barely $2,000. Even Henry Winkler made a cameo. On June 15, 1975, the picture made its debut at a minor festival. He was allegedly accused of plagiarism, although this was never confirmed. Copyright regulations were not apparent at the time. Howard had nothing to do with the 1976 fanfic case that caused other creators to settle for as much as $5,000. The request for reshoots by producer Roger Corman on April 20, 1975, was what truly rocked him. It cost him an extra $500, practically wiping out his budget. Later, on September 10th, the movie took home a modest prize from the Atlanta Film Festival. He was inspired to direct Grand Theft Auto in 1977 by this small project. Despite only costing $600,000, that film grossed $15 million. On June 7, 1975, Howard wed Cheryl Alley, his high school love. The Burbank wedding only cost $800. About 300 guests gathered, and Henry Winkler was the best man. The cost was covered by Cheryl's father. Even though Howard was making $25,000 a very episode, he desired a simple wedding. Beginning on June 8, 1975, they went on a peaceful 2-week honeymoon to Hawaii. Although there isn't any concrete evidence, there have been reports that around 1977, tabloids began publishing infidelity stories and leaking private images. Later in 1978, the rumors reached their worst point. The National Enquirer published bogus rumors about cheating on October 15. Howard described it as degrading. He claimed in a 2025 interview that a kissing chair, reminiscent of their early love, was their 50th anniversary present. In July 1980, Ron Howard took a risk. He departed from Happy Days. Howard wanted more, but the show still drew 20 million viewers each week. He requested permission to direct TV films from ABC. They offered him $100,000 for 3 more years, but he declined. No, he responded. He signed a $1 million contract with NBC on July 20, 1980. He had complete creative control because to that new contract. He quit Happy Days right before Season 8 began on September 9, 1980. Fans were taken aback. By August, ABC received 15,000 letters, pleading with him to come back. Howard later claimed that ABC handled him like a baby being snatched by an eagle. Night Shift, his first major endeavor after departing, grossed $21 million when it debuted in 1982. But the show was never the same. Without Richie, ratings fell by 30%. It continued to run until 1984, totaling 255 episodes. Howard was only 23 when he directed Grand Theft Auto in 1977. He also starred in it and co-wrote it with his father, Rance. When it was released on June 16, it made $15 million and became an unexpected hit. However, a car stunt went horribly wrong while it was being filmed. Paul Bartel, a stuntman, suffered severe injuries. He suffered internal damage and fractures. Howard feared that his career as a director would be cut short before it had really started. In 1978, he discreetly settled the case. He carried that accident with him. In subsequent ventures, he prioritized safety. In 1984, Howard directed Splash, which opened theaters on March 9. It made $69.8 million and cost $11 million to make. Tom Hanks became famous as a result. However, chaos ensued behind the scenes. Hanks threw fits, particularly when the script was altered. While filming in New York on July 15, 1983, Hanks and crew got into a heated argument. A fight had to be broken up by Howard. The movie was on the verge of being canceled by the studios, but Disney saved it with their new Touchstone label. An irate extra, called Harold Jenkins, threatened to kill Howard in 1985, while Cocoon was being filmed in Florida. Jenkins, who had been sacked, threatened violence in letters on February 12. He thought the movie made fun of the elderly. Fox had to pay $150,000 to hire security around the clock. The publication date was postponed till June 20 after the script was softened. The film still made $85 million and won Oscars for dramaturgy and visual effects. Willow came out on May 20, 1988. The concept was conceived by George Lucas in 1972, and Howard oversaw it with a $35 million budget. Despite making $137.6 million worldwide, It lost $20 million because of its extensive marketing and unimpressive reviews. Howard and Lucas were always at odds. They clashed over savings of $5 million in June 1987. Howard almost gave up. Later on, home video helped it break even. On August 20, 1989, Howard published Parenthood. It started when his 4-year-old daughter threw up sushi on him during a tumultuous flight to Australia. The movie made $126 million, yet it cost $20 million. However, author Elena Vasquez filed a lawsuit against Howard in May 1989, alleging that he had stolen her work. In June, he settled for $500,000. The case nearly prevented the distribution of the movie. Howard directed the firefighter drama, Backdraft, in 1991. On July 23, 1990, a stunt went wrong. Kurt Russell's face and hand were burned when a huge fire started. Serious safety violations were discovered during an OSHA inspection. In addition, 3 additional crew members suffered burns. They never knew when the fire would turn on them, Howard subsequently testified. Nevertheless, the film made $152 million and was nominated for a visual effects Oscar. Apollo 13 was released on June 30, 1995. Filming was difficult, yet it made $355 million globally. Tom Hanks insisted on precision, even down to the NASA transcripts. He demanded script revisions on October 12, 1994. The entire production, which had cost $2 million, shut down by October 15. On October 18, Howard vowed to resign. Staff from NASA had to mediate. Later, in 1996, the movie took home the Oscars for sound and editing. Ransom made $309 million when it was released on November 8, 1996. However, Howard got terrifying threats during the early 1996 filming, which reflected the picture. Someone threatened his children with letters on February 14. Untrustworthy cars were discovered close to his home. The FBI became involved, and phones were tapped. On March 5, the family was forced to move. No arrests were made, but the suspects fled California in April. This, according to Howard, made the film his most intimate creation. The Grinch, starring Jim Carrey, was released on November 17, 2000. The picture was nasty, yet it made $345 million. Every day, Carrey had to endure 2.5 hours of makeup application. He lost his temper on March 2020. He argued with Howard, and even gave him a shove. For one day, the filming ceased. Carrey later pledged improved behavior by April. Howard published A Beautiful Mind on December 20, 2001. It described John Nash's struggle with schizophrenia. On March 24, 2002, it won both Best Picture and Best Director at the Oscars, earning $313 million. The set, however, was tense. There were violent outbursts from Russell Crowe. On June 10, he tossed a phone at a hotel staff. Howard even fired him on April 15. However, in order to save $500,000 every day, he hired him again just 2 days later. The actress who played Nash's wife, Jennifer Connelly, claimed that Howard kept things together despite the mayhem. The Da Vinci Code, directed by Ron Howard, was a global sensation in 2006. Religious organizations, particularly the Catholic Church, were incensed. According to the myth, Jesus wed Magdalene and had a child, which a group known as Opus Dei allegedly concealed. In several nations, this sparked protests. Christian organizations in India called for its outlawing. It was rated for adults only in the Philippines. Following a bomb scare during the May 17 premiere, Ron Howard even received death threats and had to employ bodyguards. During the viewing, the critics jeered and chuckled. Opus Dei pleaded with Sony to include a fiction disclaimer on February 14, claiming that the film was a perverted portrayal of the church. The movie was deemed morally offensive by U.S. Catholic bishops, who also developed a website called JesusDecoded.com. It generated $760 million worldwide, despite all the uproar. However, Howard eventually acknowledged that the ongoing rage surrounding it was annoying. Both Howard and author Dan Brown almost got arrested for shooting without permission in Italy. Ironically, the Vatican warned people not to watch it because it was anti-Catholic, which piqued their interest. When Solo, a Star Wars story, was being made in 2017, things became chaotic. Due to creative disagreements with Lucasfilm, the original filmmakers, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, were let go in June. The project was saved by bringing in Ron Howard. In order to make the strict May 2018 deadline, he ultimately had to reshoot over 70% of the movie between late June and mid-October. The budget was raised to $275 million as a result. According to leaks, Howard destroyed the film by removing the adventurous, exciting flair and substituting a more vintage Star Wars vibe. Lawsuits were even filed. To get into character, certain actresses, including Alden Ehrenreich, required assistance. The release was postponed. Lord and Miller chose to accept executive producer titles rather than directing credit. Disgruntled fans even initiated petitions against Howard. According to several insiders, he disregarded the earlier footage, which led to altercations on the set. Although it still made $393 million, the movie's earnings fell well short of projections. Whether Howard played it too safe was a topic of debate. Ron Howard had more problems with angels and demons in 2009. With a fantastical tale of the Illuminati and antimatter posing a threat to Rome, the film portrayed the Catholic Church as the adversary. Howard said on May 3 that his crew had to construct phony versions of churches because the Vatican had surreptitiously prohibited him from filming inside them. Despite the Vatican's statement eventually declaring the film harmless, he felt that this covert boycott cost him $50 million in earnings. Initially, they had declined to endorse it. In April, Archbishop Velasco de Palis cautioned that, as was the case with the Da Vinci Code, protesting could actually make matters worse. William Donoghue, another Catholic leader, advised people to spread the truth rather than boycott. Because the plot featured murders, some churches even refused to allow access for filming. Despite this, the film earned $485 million, and Tom Hanks stated that its purpose was to arouse curiosity rather than rage. The Vatican was largely silent, in contrast to the previous movie. For the 2014 movie, The Good Lie, Ron Howard's firm Imagine Entertainment was the target of a significant lawsuit in 2015. According to 54 Sudan refugees, the film Without Fair Pay uses their actual suffering. They filed a 101-page lawsuit in Atlanta on February 19. They claimed that in return for $55,000 and a guarantee of assistance, they had exchanged terrible tales of famine and fleeing militias. The migrants claimed they never saw a dime of the Reese Witherspoon film, which was released on October 3. Producers Mike Nagel and Bobby Newire were charged with breach of contract. Since Howard's squad had raised millions for refugee aid, fans were taken aback. In 2017, a confidential settlement was reached in the lawsuit. Although Howard was not specifically mentioned, there was a lot of criticism. Despite only earning $3.2 million in the US, the film made a significant impact due to the genuine suffering it depicted. A horrific accident occurred in 2013 while Rush was being filmed. The 1976 Formula One rivalry was the subject of the movie. Additionally, a stunt driver called David Crowder was injured during a sequence that mimicked Niki Lauda's fiery crash. A suspension broke, and the car crashed on August Honest, while filming the flaming wreck at Nürburgring. It resembled the actual situation uncannily. Safety was disregarded, according to Crowder's lawsuit. A settlement was reached in 2014. The situation worsened when the stunt coordinator's son, Sean Edwards, perished in a collision just 18 days after the film's September 27 premiere. Howard faced difficult questioning about taking shortcuts with the $38 million millet budget after being subpoenaed. Despite making $90 million, Rush was criticized for exalting danger excessively, particularly because it used actual accident footage of LA's injuries. Bryce Dallas Howard, Ron's daughter, took on the Nepo baby controversy head-on in August 2025. She stated on the Happy, Sad, Confused podcast that she was well aware of her Hollywood privilege. She was born on March 20, 1981. Her grandpa Rance, who lived from 1928 to 2017, her father Ron, her uncle Clint, who was born in 1959, and her grandmother Jean, who lived from 1927 to 2000, were all involved in the firm. Bryce acknowledged that she had no trouble opening doors, but she emphasized how hard she worked. Online fans' opinions were divided. While some questioned whether Ron had assisted her in landing gigs, others welcomed her honesty. Although Ron never acknowledged in public that he gave her work, Bryce insisted that family privilege was a significant factor. BuzzFeed commended her transparency in 2025, particularly in contrast to other celebrities, who downplay any advantages. The fact that Henry Winkler is her godfather was one unexpected revelation. She had directed a number of movies by that point and acted in the more than $1 movie Jurassic World. In 2015, $6 billion. On November 25, 2017, Ron's father, Rance Howard, died at the age of 89. After contracting the West Nile virus, he developed cardiac failure. Rance, who was born Harold Beckenholt on November 17, 1928, began acting in 1949 and has appeared in more than 140 motion pictures and 177 television series. In a heartfelt ode to Rance, his sons Ron and Clint wrote in People that his passion for performing had a lasting impact on their family. He starred in films such as Nebraska and Chinatown. Although there were rumors of a battle between Clint and Ron over the will, there was never any concrete evidence of it. Rather, it all suggested that the brothers had a close relationship. Ron even expressed on Twitter how fortunate he was to have Clint as a brother. Grand Theft Auto was one among the numerous projects the two collaborated on in 1977. Rance continued to act right up until the very end, which is an emotional fact. Only 36 hours before his death, he completed a role. On June 7, 2025, Ron and Cheryl Howard commemorated their 50th wedding anniversary. At Burbank, California's John Burroughs High School, they first crossed paths. On November 1970, they went on their first date. They ate pizza and watched It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World. Ron expressed his gratitude on Instagram for the challenges they had overcome together. By 2025, they had 6 grandchildren after raising 4 children. Reed in 1987, Paige and Jocelyn twins in 1985, and Bryce in 1981. Ron's devotion with his profession caused rumors of a close divorce in the 1980s, but no current interview verified it. Rather, they appeared more powerful than before. Ron claimed in 2020 that no one else was ever suitable for him. When they reenacted their first date in their vintage 1970 VW Bug, it was the cutest moment. Cheryl was the entertaining granny who broke all the rules for the grandchildren. Ron Howard received criticism for a sentence in his January 14, 2011 film, The Dilemma. In a cliched manner, Vince Vaughn's character joked that electric automobiles were gay, not in the gay sense. After a student named Tyler Clemente committed suicide in September 2010, GLAAD and Ellen DeGeneres criticized the joke for promoting bullying. Howard kept the joke in the movie, but Universal removed it from the promos on October 30. He claimed that taking away the joke would detract from the humor because it reflected the character's nature. Although he later realized how damaging the word could be, he acknowledged in a January interview with the BBC that he didn't anticipate such a strong reaction. GLAAD and Anderson Cooper were among the critics who referred to it as a deadly term. Howard stated that while he was concerned with sensitivity, he did not wish to restrict narrative. The film brought in $69.7 million, but the prank continued to irritate people. Ron directed Netflix's Hillbilly Elegy in 2020. The film, which was based on Jay, was released on November 24. Dance's autobiography. Amy Adams portrayed the mother. The grandmother, played by Glenn Close, received a Razzie and an Oscar nomination. The budget for the film was $45 million. Audiences gave it an 82% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, while critics gave it only 25%. Howard told Vulture in August 2025 that he was taken aback when Vance was selected as Trump's running mate for 2024. He claimed that during their 2018 and 2019 filming, Vance appeared to be moderate. Vance had even referred to Trump as repulsive back in 2016. Howard acknowledged that on November 6, 2024, he texted Vance to congratulate him, but to express his disappointment. He described the film as a mixed bag. It received negative reviews but a lot of support from fans. According to Howard, Vance's shift in values was the true surprise. On September 7, Ron's 2025 film Eden made its Toronto Film Festival debut. Starring Jude Law, Sydney Sweeney, Daniel Bruhl, Vanessa Kirby, and Ana de Armas, the film was originally called Origin of the Species. It was based on a fantastic true story from the Galapagos Islands in the 1920s about murder caused by betrayal and jealousy. Filming started on November 27, 2023, and ended on February 14, 2024, with most of the scenes taking place in Queensland and a few in the Galapagos. Due to Australian tax advantages, the budget's initial $55 million was reduced to $35 million. In an interview on August 25, Howard stated that he was anxious while filming the genuine story. Based on a true 1934 tragedy, one startling scene depicted a woman giving birth by herself and passing away. There were conflicting reviews. It received a 68% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, with some critics calling it dark, seductive, and ridiculous. According to Howard, It served as a warning about loneliness, particularly after the incident. Howard kept 2 murders and a baroness from the actual case in the script, although he only slightly toned them down. Ron received his first acting Emmy nomination in 2025 for his role in the Seth Rogen-led comedy In the Studio. On July 15, the show received 23 nominations. In Episode 3, which aired on March 14, Ron portrayed a humorous, exaggerated version of himself and engaged Rogen's character in a yelling match and even a brawl. He had not performed on television since the conclusion of Happy Days in 1984. In an interview with People on September 6, he claimed that a 1995 incident made him too superstitious to hope for victory. Ron attributed the paper's box office failure at the time, which made $48 million on a $30 million budget, to disregarding a psychic's advice. He made fun of his 195 TV years, without an acting award on Instagram. Overall, this was his 14th Emmy nomination. As a producer, he had previously won 3 awards. In January 2025, Howard had a real bruised rib as a result of the shockingly improvised battle scenes in the episode.